Welcome to the Reviews Without Remorse podcast with Joe and Dave. Be warned, the discussions in this podcast may contain detailed spoilers. For spoiler-free reviews of newly released films, be sure to check out our show on our YouTube channel. Enter at your own risk and enjoy the show. Your use of language has altered since our arrival. It is currently laced with, shall we say, more colorful metaphors, double dumbass on you, and so forth.
Oh, you mean the profanity?
Yes.
Well, that's simply the way they talk here. Nobody pays attention to you unless you swear every other word. Seriously, screw you, Alex Kurtzman! I am your favorite double dumbass, call me David, and with me is my bandana ear-covering cohort in crime, Joe.
I did a little too much LDS.
And this is episode 176, and in this show we will discuss The World Lost Christopher Plummer. And Joe and I paid tribute to this incredible actor. It was Super Bowl weekend! And the only thing we're talking about is the Falcon and the Winter Soldier trailer that premiered. And then, the second most oddest entry into the Star Trek franchise, tune in next week for the oddest, Joe and I take a lovely trip to Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home. What up, my man?
My friend, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. You know, I gotta tell you, this movie was like a little palate cleanser. You know, it was nice.
Totally see where that's coming from. So, with that, let's get to it.
Straight line. All right, go inside. Dry off, clean up, change your clothes, report back here. Immediately. Fräulein, you will stay here, please. Now, Fräulein, I want a truthful answer from you.
Yes, Captain?
Have my children, by any chance, been climbing trees today?
Yes, Captain.
Born December 13th, 1929, in Toronto, Canada. That's right, Christopher Plummer was Canadian. You know, and it feels like Canada is like exports some of their weirdest actors. You know, here you have your Christopher Plummer. Alternatively, you've got your Jim Carreys, and then you've got your William Shatners. You know, so it kind of sort of fits in. I mean, right off the bat, let's just get the big one out of the way. What he'll forever be known for has to be the Sound of Music.
Sure.
You know, probably as Captain Von Trapp, 1965, probably his biggest role to date. But if you look at his IMDb page, holy smokes, I am stuttering tonight for some reason. He has 217 films to his credit. For you young whippersnappers, if you saw the movie Knives Out, that was him, Harlan Thrombey. And he was damn awesome in that movie, which, was a surprisingly good movie. And I only say surprisingly because Joe and I both kind of have... well, let's just say we have issues with the director, Rian Johnson, but we're not here to talk about Rian Johnson or anything like that. We're here to talk about this wonderful man. He died on February 5th at the age of 91 in Weston, Connecticut. 216 credits. Dude, like, I want to, do highlights, but it's like, how do you even highlight that? There's just so much. I remember him, the first time I saw him was... when he played, because this goes to show how old I am, ladies and gentlemen. Back in my day, you had your HBO, and that was the only place you could go to watch full-length movies without interruption. You couldn't rent or anything like that. And he played Sherlock Holmes in Murder by Decree, with James Mason playing Watson. That's the first time I ever saw him that I was aware of. And one of the first thing that comes off is, what a speaking voice. Like, seriously, every word that came out of that man's mouth was nuanced in some way, shape, or form. Mm-hmm. Another one of his big films probably was, Beautiful Mind, where he played the psychiatrist to Russell Crowe's crazy math guy.
Yep.
The Insider, where he played Mike Wallace. I actually like that movie a bit, but then again, I do have an affinity for Michael Mann directed movies, and we are going to have to do Michael Mann movies at some point, just so you know. Uh, yeah, a full career spanning from his first credit, which was in 1953, in a television show, all the way up till something called Heroes of the Golden Masks, which it seems he's doing a voiceover for. So that's going to be his last movie to 2021. I actually also remember him as the voice of Charles Muntz in the movie Up, the Pixar animated movie. Do you remember that movie?
Oh yeah, sure.
Okay. He just had such wonderful presence, wonderful voice. And to be honest with you, if we hadn't gotten delayed, this is where irony is. If we hadn't gotten delayed, we would have been talking about him in the up and coming Star Trek VI.
Tickle us, do we not laugh? Prick us, do we not bleed? Wrong us, shall we not revenge?
All right. Now we've given him something else to shoot at.
Aye, sir.
The game's afoot, huh? Our revels now are ended, Kirk. Cry havoc! And let's slip the dogs of war.
That is very true. Yeah, that was the first thing that came to mind for me.
That was absolutely was. Ooh, and let's not forget he played Dr. Gons in 12 Monkeys.
Yes, he did.
Another little fun movie. I mean, seriously, you go through his credits, and I guarantee you, go through his credits, throw a dart, watch the movie. You'll be fine.
Yeah. It's very true. Honestly, it is ironic that we're going to be talking about Star Trek VI in 2 weeks. He was excellent in that, and you're absolutely right. I mean, he is the kind of guy. He showed up in a lot of different things. I remember him in Dolores Claiborne, which was very good, kind of forgettable now. Malcolm X, he was in. But yeah, I have to tell you, it's ironic because only recently, in the last few months, I more or less went my whole life almost without ever seeing The Sound of Music. It was one of those films that I knew of it enough that I felt like I never had to actually bother seeing it. But yeah, because my girlfriend's mom is such a big fan, many a night we've got The Sound of Music on. And yeah, I mean, he's just riveting every time. It's a great film, and it's no wonder oddly, he doesn't like that role. He kind of regretted doing it, and he kind of said it was not the kind of film for him, really. So he's always had sort of a love-hate relationship with it, but boy, what a great film. So this man will be missed.
So, who would like to start? Mr. Barnes, why does Sam aggravate you?
15 seconds to drop.
So what's our plan?
Great.
It's not WandaVision. Let's start right off the back. It is not WandaVision, and it's not meant to be WandaVision. Okay? The Falcon and the Winter Soldier trailer premiered, and Joe and I actually were texting each other back and forth a little bit about it. And you know what? I'll let you explain your side first before I go into my feelings, because I feel like you have an interesting angle that I'd like you to enunciate before I have a chance to dagger you.
Oh, I hope I kind of don't remember what I said, but you kind of summed it up with "It's not WandaVision," frankly.
Okay, sorry.
That
about
was quite. That was, no. Well, I mean, that was quite literally my takeaway. Honestly, when I saw the trailer, I said to myself, and kind of going back further. I mean, there were little teaser trailers for a lot of the shows when they were announced, and WandaVision was the one that always caught my eye. So this kind of is probably just a little bit more of that, where I saw this trailer. I said, it looks solid. It looks like I'll be watching every week. It looks action packed and it looks fun. But yeah, not the kind of brain buster that WandaVision is. So, I mean, I'm looking forward to it for sure. But this almost, you kind of mentioned before how WandaVision ain't no Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Kind of feel like this is a little closer to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., where it's just going to be kind of a straightforward show. I'm sure they got a great story lined up. I'm looking forward to the Baron Zemo character and his mask and everything. The costume commander geeked out a little bit. But yeah, it looks solid, and that's kind of it.
I'm going to agree with you. I'm actually very excited by this. I kind of felt like both Bucky and Falcon got the short end of the stick when it came to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Yeah, they had a decent enough introduction and everything like that, but it didn't, like, all of a sudden Cap is giving Falcon the shield. And
right.
I get it. That's fine. But I would have liked to have had seen their relationship grow closer as the movies progressed. And I kind of feel like that in a weird way, this show is going to, retroactively explain that, so to speak. And I like that. Daniel Bruhl was one of my favorite villains in all of the MCU until Thanos came along. So having him back as Zemo, very happy about. It was nice to see Sharon Carter come back. Be kind of funky if she got with either Falcon or Winter Soldier. I hope they're not going to do anything like that. And it looks like a Brubaker comic brought to life. And for me, that's plenty. It is not going to touch anywhere near the intriguing premise and idea. And so far, fingers crossed, the execution of WandaVision. And yes, we are going to get to WandaVision once the series is ended. But yeah, looking forward to it. March 19th, ladies and gentlemen. That's where it is.
Avoid the planet Earth at all costs. We are under the attack of an orbiting probe.
Notify all stations. Starfleet emergency. Red alert.
Earth is on the edge of destruction.
We cannot survive unless a way can be found to respond to the probe.
The key to saving the future.
Spock, you're talking about the end of every life on Earth.
Can be found only in the past.
We're going to attempt time travel. Sulu, take us home.
To save Earth from an alien probe, Admiral James T. Kirk and his fugitive crew go back in time to San Francisco in 1986 to retrieve the only beings who can communicate with it, humpback whales. Written by Steve Merson, Peter Creeks, Harve Bennett, and Nicholas Meyer. Based on a story by Leonard Nimoy and Harve Bennett. Based on the television series Star Trek, created by Gene Roddenberry. Directed by Leonard Nimoy. Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home. So one of the things that I realized watching this movie again, and actually to me was a positive thing, I realized that I didn't have a lot of memories of like images. Like in Wrath of Khan, you kind of always remember the phasers hitting the side of the Enterprise during the first attack with the Reliant, stuff like that. You remember the Genesis planet blowing up and going out, stuff like that. This movie doesn't really have moments like that. And it's because all the moments in this movie, like the moments that you remember, are all character-based. And I'm not complaining at all about that. The double dumbass, like at the beginning that we started off with, rank, admiral. Do you know what the nuclear vessels are? All that stuff. All of them were character moments, nice little character moments, which I got a kick out of. It's kind of almost, it is a logical next step because, somehow in one movie, they not only have to resolve the fact that Kirk stole the Enterprise and blew it up, and took out a bunch of Klingons and stuff like that. They needed to find a way to reset by the end of the movie, And I kind of feel they sort of succeeded, although there was a little bit of magic hand waving and stuff like that. But you know what? That's okay. This movie is just, it's kind of pure joy from a Star Trek perspective.
Yes, it certainly is. And I think after the, I don't want to say dourness of Star Trek 3, this was, as you said early on, the perfect palate cleanser, where it felt very refreshing after the last one. And speaking of, let me give you my long-winded intro into how I felt watching this time. Okay. Because I went back, you know, I saw this film in the theater, and I saw it with some good friends who were also Star Trek fans. So we had a good kind of, you know, we were very excited for this one. And I remember just being delighted by this movie. I mean, we laughed through the whole thing. We were loving it. And by the end, when you see them sort of go over the top of the Excelsior to see the new Star Trek, there's the new Enterprise, NCC 1701A. We literally were like choking up. I mean, I think we had tears in our eyes at this point. So we just love this movie. So fast forward to, I watched it yesterday, and as I was going into it, I again kind of remembered, oh yeah, this one is fun, but I remember feeling a little dread because I think the one last week kind of left me really flat, where I just felt like, you know, the dialogue wasn't really there. It was just sort of a straight, you know, forward, connect the dots story. We know what we need to do with this movie, and we do it. And yeah, it was kind of joyless. It was joyless, but honestly, if the you know, the dialogue were a little bit better, I would have been a little more happy with that, etc. So I was actually a tiny bit trepidatious going into this when I was bracing myself that it might not be as good as I remembered it. Well, I have to tell you, honestly, watching it again, and it's been a long time since I've sat and watched this one, it was a delight all over again. I really, really enjoyed this one. It felt like every bit as I did when I first saw it. And honestly, I remember, again, kind of going into it a tiny bit trepidatious. And by the way, I forgot that Nimoy had done this one too. I forgot that he did both. So as the film started, you had a little bit of the expository, the Klingon shouting and screaming about Kirk is no good and rotten. By the time we get to Vulcan, and they do that scene where Spock is doing all the questions, rapid fire.
Computer, resume testing.
Who said logic is the cement of our civilization with which we ascend from chaos using reason as our guide?
T. Planahath, matron of Vulcan philosophy.
Correct. What is the molecular formula of aluminium sulfide crystals? White queen to section 5, grid 6. Queen takes knight, rook takes queen. White pawn to section 5, grid 7. Pawn takes rook. Checkmate. What significant contribution to bioengineering was made in Lucarian outposts on Cleanse?
The universal atmospheric element compensator.
Correct. Adjust the sine wave of this magnetic envelope so that antineutrons can pass through it, but antigravitons cannot. Correct. What is the electronic configuration of gadolinium? Correct. How do you feel? How do you feel? How do you feel?
I do not understand the question.
What is it, Spock?
I do not understand the question, Mother.
Well, you're half human. The computer knows that.
The question is irrelevant.
Spock, the retraining of your mind has been in the Vulcan way, so you may not understand feelings. But as my son, you have them. They will surface.
As you wish, since you deem them of value. But I cannot wait here to find them.
Why? Where must you go?
I must go to Earth to offer testimony.
You do this for friendship.
I do it because I was there.
Spock, does the good of the many outweigh the good of the one?
I would accept that as an axiom.
Well, then you stand here alive because of a mistake made by your flawed, feeling human friends. They have sacrificed their futures because they believed that the good of the one, you, was more important to them.
Humans make illogical decisions.
They do indeed.
When his mother came in and they had that scene together, I was already, I kind of breathed a sigh of relief. I was like, oh yeah, I'm in safe hands with this one. The dialogue there between Spock and his mom was really good. I was really enjoying it. It was very smart. For a film that probably, you would think there would be a lot of conveniences in this film. Not really, honestly. I kind of felt like this is a film with smart people making smart choices. I kept waiting for them to sort of drop the ball, and it never happened. So, yeah, that's kind of just sort of my initial thoughts jumping in. I really loved it. I enjoyed it very much. Very warm welcome after Search for Spock.
Jane Wyatt just knocked it out of the park in that scene, didn't she?
She sure did.
I mean, she was the original. Was she the original? I'm pretty sure she was the original.
I believe she was.
Yeah. Because yes, the late great Jane Wyatt. Yeah, she was perfect in that scene. And the other thing I liked about that opening scene, it really does set the tone for the movie nicely. Because there he is, and it's Spock, and he's very serious, and he's answering his questions. And then how do you feel? And that, one eyebrow raise of, I don't understand the question, the confusion. I remember seeing that in an audience, and everybody just started laughing when it said, how do you feel? And in retrospect, you realize, you know what? It totally sets the tone perfectly for this movie. It's like, yes, we have a serious story to tell, but we're going to have fun along the way.
Right. Yeah.
So I appreciate that. And like you said, the dialogue between them is just such a beautiful, wonderful scene. Perfect. A nice little return to form, nearly of Spock. I mean, granted, this is Spock almost maybe halfway through season 1 Spock, that he's kind of re-portraying again with just a little bit of edge. That's what it felt like to me. Because like when you first meet Spock, he's just cold and calculating and so on and so forth. By about midway through the first season, he's a little more comfortable in his skin. So this Spock is comfortable in his skin, but he's just still not like completely old Spock, and that was fine. It was absolutely fine. I felt like he was the perfect straight man for the way that this story went. Now, the rumor is that Harv Bennett wrote the screenplay portions of everything that took place in the future, and that Nicholas Meyer is the one that wrote everything that took place in San Francisco.
Okay.
That's just and I could buy that. And honestly, that's almost weird because that goes back to his time after time thing again, because here we are, another fish out of water story in San Francisco. Kind of feels like that's Nicholas Meyer's beat right there, don't you think?
Yeah, sure. Okay, I'll buy that.
Now, the unfortunate thing about this movie is it's hard to talk about because it's a very, very simple story. And I kind of feel like, discussing just what the story is doesn't really do it justice. Alien from another planet tries to communicate with something in the ocean. They figure out it's something in the ocean. They figure out it's a humpback whale. They go back in time, get the humpback whales, come back. Very, very simple story. Now, the parts in between where they're trying to turn the Klingon bird of prey ship into something that can transport the animals, trying to get the animals, finding out, and all that other stuff. It is a very straightforward story. What makes this story work is that it has these really great interactions between the character. Of course, Spock goes off with Kirk, and McCoy goes off with Scotty. Sulu kind of disappears into his own thing until he comes back with a helicopter. I feel bad for him. Kind of feel like that would have been something nice for him. And then Uhura and Chekhov are looking for the nuclear vessels. And that's really all I could say with regards to the plot. There's not really a lot of special effects in this movie. There's, the special effects at the beginning, the special effects in the end. I'm not sure what else to say about this movie. Just that besides that, because the thing is like this movie is a culmination, and yet is also like probably the most popular. I think it was like the biggest box office and had the most crossover with regular audiences out of all the Star Trek movies. So I'm not even really sure what else to say. I don't want to sit here and just talk about, hey, remember the scene, in the hospital where she gives the lady the pill and it grows a kidney? That was awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel your pain. It does feel the film is. It's funny because for the third film, which we sort of talked about, and I almost feel like the best thing we were able to say about it was that you kind of have to watch it to sort of see how this story progresses. This one almost sort of stops dead in its tracks, and it feels very episodic. This feels very much like we come in, the story in progress, and then from there we just do an episode. We do a 2-hour long Star Trek episode. And then at the end, we go back to that larger story that was happening.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it absolutely positively feels like we're just going to take a break for a while and have some fun. And again, after the heaviness of the third one, boy, was that kind of necessary, and boy, does it work. But it does. I suppose you could, if you're going to lay a criticism, it does sort of feel like fluff. I mean, it is a little more of a fluff movie. Somebody, Nimoy, probably got the idea. We're into wildlife and the extinction of certain species, which was a very sort of hot topic at the time. Came up with the idea for the story, and it works. It is a perfectly fine story, but it does feel like a 2-hour episode of Star Trek. Like we're kind of not doing these narratives in terms of the bigger story. We're just taking a little break to have a little fun, and that's all it is. I think if one thing pops out at me as I watch this, I kind of said to myself, like they're going back to 20th century Earth, right? Mm-hmm. And I felt like, and again, I like how I found it to be pretty realistic. I found the problems and dilemmas that they would run into to be, I mean, again, it's a very well written script. It did not feel, situational. It didn't feel like we're just going to make up some little problems here and there. I felt like everything that was happening in the story felt extremely logical. Like, yes, this is the problem they would have. The part when they can't even buy a newspaper without any money, and he goes inside, sells the glasses, ironically, and comes out, and he just starts handing everybody like $20. I felt like at that moment I was saying to myself, wow, for all the other exotic places they went, for seeking out new life, new civilizations, going to these really bizarre civilizations, some of them very primitive, et cetera, they seem to be having a way tougher time on Earth.
Well, I mean, they don't want to infect the timeline, and yet they do. So that's kind of weird. Yeah. It's supposed to be the whole stranger in a strange land thing. I get what they were trying to go for, and for the most part, it works. I didn't really have any problems with the logical steps. I felt that some of the solutions that they came up with made sense to me. If there's anything I do want to stop and talk about, I do want to talk a little bit about the opening line to the show and why that pissed me off irrationally.
Bring it on, brother.
There is our brothers. They have no idea we exist, but I consider them brothers because they are out there. They are reviewing movies, and they're kind of silly and crazy, like my friend Joe and I are. Over at Red Letter Media, when they reviewed Star Trek Picard, one of the things they loved to show over and over again was this scene of an admiral saying this line,
sheer fucking hubris.
Sheer effing hubris. That was in response to Picard asking for a ship, and that's her response, but it wasn't what she said. Sheer hubris would have been fine. It's the fact that she dropped the F-bomb. As I was watching this, I thought to myself, I seem to remember Kirk and Spock having a conversation about, how, in these times people won't listen to you unless you curse. Or something along those lines. And that's why I included the full quote at the start of the show, because I just wanted to kind of point out, hey, you know what? Are you trying to tell me in the 80 years since Kirk and Spock suddenly language degraded in the Federation again, and the F-bomb was a great thing to drop whenever the hell you wanted? F-bombs, S-bombs, and stuff like that. Like Spock going around saying, just give me one damn minute, sir, is funny because it's unexpected and everything like that. Because the whole point of Star Trek was to be hopeful for the future. Not that we remain these, prejudiced, barbaric beasts or whatever, however you want to look at it or anything like that. That we
idiocracy.
Idiocracy. That we transcended all of our insecurities, all of our judgmentalness, all that stuff. There was there's this episode of Star Trek where they run into Abraham Lincoln, and Lincoln refers to Uhura as a charming negress. And I, even at my young age, I remember being shocked by that. And, and she's like nonplussed. It's like, well, it's just a word. It doesn't really describe who I am. So it makes no difference. And, what do you know the difference? You're from a different time and place. And I love that. That's like a great scene. That was one of the things about Star Trek that I love the most. It's like everybody else made a big deal that, there's Uhura, there's a black woman on the bridge, and there's an Asian, piloting the ship and stuff like that. But like the show was just like, oh, no, this is just another day. I always loved that about the show. I love that it didn't need to bombard you with bombast in order to make you care. And that scene when it happened in Star Trek 4, when they were talking about the use of language and stuff like that, it just really, for a minute there, I had to stop the movie for a little bit because it really just pissed me off. It's like, it's like, how do you not take one of the biggest movies of all the Star Treks and not realize that they just called you an idiot for using the F word in a Star Trek related show? It just really, really got me so damn angry. And you know what? And in a weird way, when I got past my anger, once again, it elevated this movie. Because again, it reminded me, but this is what Star Trek is about. Name the big battle that happens in Star Trek The Voyage Home. Oh, that's right. There isn't one. There is no big battle. No two ships fight against each other. This is an entire study of these people.
Unless you want to count the Klingon ship against the whaling ship.
Yeah, that really wasn't much of a battle now, was it?
I threw you off track with a lame joke, sorry.
That's all right. That's right. My point is that this one is the one that they say was the most accessible to a general audience outside of Star Trek. And you can totally see why. It has charm, it has appeal, all the characters have these great little moments. It's funny, but it tells a compelling story. And maybe a little heavy-handed on the, save the whales message and all that other stuff, but outside of that, it's still basically a solid character study in a sci-fi universe. That's what sci-fi is. That's what Star Trek is supposed to be. It's not about sheer effing hubris. It is about people doing the best they can in the situation that they're in, and even discussing, the language just feels a little colorful and stuff like that. It's like, oh, well, it's understandable, but, and perfectly logical, rational explanation. And anybody that tries to tell me that all Star Trek fans want is big explosions, you're full of it. You're absolutely, positively full of it. Kurtzman likes to point out, well, the last season of the last 2 seasons of Deep Space Nine had all these giant space battles and so on and so on. And my thing is, because by the time we got to those space battles, we built up to all of that. It was built upon a foundation. You haven't earned these big action pieces because I don't care about any of your characters. All right. We're supposed to be talking about Star Trek 4. Thus endeth my rant. Screw you, Alex Kurtzman. You're a hack. You're a piece of shit that I wouldn't even scrape off my shoe. I would just burn the shoe.
Judging by the pollution content of the atmosphere, I believe we have arrived at the latter half of the 20th century.
Stardate 1986.
San Francisco. Our own world is waiting for us to save it.
They have 24 hours.
Everybody remember where we parked. Break up.
To complete their mission.
It looked like a cadet review.
We will beam in tonight, collect the photons, and beam out.
I want you all to be very careful.
Without being discovered.
We have an intruder.
All right, who are you?
You're not exactly catching us at our best.
That much is certain.
But now let's get back to this. We have a pretty solid cast across the board. Our normal characters, and Catherine Hicks joins the crew as Dr. Gillian Taylor. A little too cheerleaderly for me, but nothing really to complain about or anything. Robin Curtis came back as Savick. Here's a funny little thing. Did you know that originally she was supposed to remain behind on Vulcan because she was pregnant after she had mated with the younger Spock in Star Trek 3?
I certainly did. In fact, props to my friend Kyle, who kind of reminded me of that, which I was glad I brought up last week. Do you think they did it? Because I did hear that, and I guess Kyle kind of said he was pretty sure Nimoy was the one who kind of nixed it. Said, I don't know if I'm crazy about this idea. But yes, I did hear that, and that is kind of an interesting theory. And by the way, and again, props to Kyle for kind of throwing this one at me, would have made her appearance in 6 that much more interesting had they kind of left that possibility out there.
Well, originally in 6 it was supposed to be Savick again, but I don't know. The character of Savick, this is the last we see of her. There is the ignominious end to a promising character from Star Trek 2. And I really kind of wish, I'm agreeing with you, I kind of wish they had the balls to try that particular thing out. Because another thing, at the time, there's a story there that you could have done. Because at the time, when she got impregnated by the younger Spock, he was mutating with the planet. How do we know that baby isn't going to mutate of some sort? There could have been a lot of great stories you could have covered there.
There you go. It would have been interesting for sure. In fact, I kind of almost wish that, well, first of all, you're right. When she sort of says her goodbyes, the word unceremonious popped into my head. But yeah, it would have been interesting had they just left a line in there that kind of left it just a tiny little bit of lingering question as to why she's staying behind. Mm-hmm. I agree with you. I mean, again, the fact that they recast her already for 3, I kind of felt like by the time she's leaving in this one, it's kind of like, all right, I think we're done with this character anyway. Had they kept the same actress, I think you would have had a different feeling about that.
Perhaps. I kind of hope so. Well, I mean, we don't know until I can get a portal gun that goes between dimensions. I'm never going to really know. Never going to know how Lucas really would have done the sequel trilogies. I have to deal with my reality. This is my reality right now. And the reality is, nope, she just disappeared.
Yeah. By the way, there were also, there were a couple cameos in this. I don't know if I call them cameos, but just like there was a few times when I saw an actor and actress that I was like, wait, where do I know that one from? One of them was the captain of the first starship that kind of runs into the probe. She was a black lady.
Oh, I think Madge Sinclair is her name. That's the actress's name.
Okay.
She was Sarabi, Mufasa's wife in in Lion King. In the Lion King animated movie, yeah. And she was in Coming to America.
That's where I was headed. I kept looking at her going like, why is she so familiar? And I'm saying to myself, put a little accent on her. Where do I know her from? And then it finally hit me. And I was like, oh yeah, it's Akeem's mother.
Yep. Unfortunately, she died back in 1995. Young.
No, really? No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, 57. Yeah, hey, I'm at an age now where 57 is young, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, right. Seriously. The other one that popped out at me was remember the guy, we're running out of air, yada, yada, yada. He just comes over a screen. His ship is getting knocked out by the probe. That was VJ Armitage. And the only other thing I think he's ever done was he was James Bond's contact in Octopussy.
VJ, yes. Yep. You're right. He's a soccer and sports commentator. Former tennis player. Excuse me.
Right. That's
Yep. That nice little cameos across the board. We don't really have a lot to talk about with this movie, do we?
I mean, it is one of those where you just sort of sit there going, yeah, this was fun. Oh, that part was funny. Oh, that was pretty cool. You're absolutely right. I mean, it is a little bit of a struggle because, I mean, again, it was the perfect palate cleanser, and I'll tell you too, and kind of just to sort of reiterate where I started from. I really did sort of come into this kind of a little skeptical. Like I was almost nervous that it wouldn't hold up to my memory of it, but it really did. And I remember even parts like there were some of the parts I thought were bordering on a little too silly. Mm-hmm. One part, like for example, there was one part where Chekhov gets captured. He's being interrogated, and for some reason, he's playing it like he's Spock, or at least they wrote it like he was Spock. Like the guy says, "All right, let's take it from the top." Well, what's at the top? Things like that. And it was like, look, I mean, we have English. I mean, we still use phrases. So that was a little goofy. The part when Scotty's talking to the computer. I mean, again, we all chuckled and it was great. But the point I'm getting at is that I thought these scenes were going to be a little kind of dragging and like not as funny, but they really kind of were. And even when they do the part when they go into the hospital to break out Chekhov, I mean, even just the way, even the music tells you like this is like a Keystone Caper. Like this is supposed to be just out there and funny and things. But I was like, boy, this really does work. Honestly, it was all working. It was a lot of fun. And frankly, I'll throw this at you and you're going to be like, all right, that's a little steep compliment. But I even had moments where I was comparing the script to a James Cameron where, and I've done this because when we talked about Rambo 2, I said, you could really see the way Cameron crafts a script where kind of just when you think we've had the last climax, something else happens. And it feels like there's a lot of really good climaxes in the film. And I remember after they broke out Chekhov, that felt like that whole scene was very over the top and fun. And you sort of had this vibe, like I think I just saw the best part of the movie. Then they go out and they do the thing with the fishermen, the whalers who are hunting the whales. And I mean, the part when it's a kind of race against the clock, just when you see them fire off the what's the word I'm looking for? The harpoon.
The harpoon. Yeah, you got it.
And it just kind of goes clank in midair, and all of a sudden the ship appears and it's like just this massive ship is just a few feet above the, I remember like seeing that in the theater, just being like, whoa, like I thought that was just like the coolest thing. Cause I loved how you saw the size of the ship compared to the other, so honestly, I really, the script was really, really smart. And I kind of felt like it was one of those kinds of scripts where, again, it just, every time you think you hit a new peak, there's a new peak just on the other side. And it really did. everything about it was aces. Like it really does. It's an incredibly satisfying screenplay. I felt like every time, again, we got to the next part, it was more satisfying than what had just come before, to the point where, again, like when they finally reveal the new Enterprise, you're just sort of, you're just, you're over the top, it was a joyful moment. So yeah, I don't know. I put it this way. I'm surprised I'm raving about this movie as much as I am, because again, I haven't seen it in a long time. This is going back a long time, and I thought it was, this is not going to hold up as well, but it really did.
It's nice to see you haven't quite gotten so jaded, my man.
See, just, it's funny, but I feel like I'm redeeming myself after last week, because last week I did feel it was a bit of a letdown, and this one was a very opposite experience. I'm kind of surprised, honestly, and I'll say this: I think it probably shows that Leonard Nimoy was really kind of getting his feet wet. Like I think he was getting acclimated to directing at this point.
Yeah, he was definitely getting his sea legs. I think he followed this up with like 3 Men and a Baby.
Yes, he absolutely did. Yes, he did. And that was, a very well received film.
Yes, it was. I kind of feel like we lost out with this guy. I feel like he was just starting to really get comfortable in his skin, and he just kind of, as a director, love him as an actor, but as a director, yeah.
You're from outer space.
No, I'm from Iowa. I only work in outer space. Let's do our job and get out of here.
Freeze! Take off, can you hear me? Freeze! I've lost it.
Who are you?
Admiral Clark!
I'm coming with you.
You can't. Our next stop is the 23rd century.
Well, you know what, dude? I don't really have anything else to say about this movie, so we might as well score this sucker. And please don't take the fact that this is, 6 or 7 minutes shorter than we normally do as an indictment against the movie. It's really just, it's a hard movie to discuss because it fits exactly into what it is about film that I love. Some things just, you can't do justice as a description or even a review. This movie is 2 movies in the making. If there wasn't Star Trek 2 and 3, much as it was maligned, if it wasn't for those 2 movies, we wouldn't have had this movie. And this movie combines the elements that were that were presented to us previously into a wonderful little character narrative that just happens to be wrapped in a sci-fi wrapper, which to me is the epitome of what science fiction is supposed to be. It is not supposed to be about explosions. It's not supposed to be about, high tech and blah, 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 blah. That's all nice and stuff. I like looking at that stuff. Don't get me wrong. And like Joe said, the scene over the water where the bird of prey just appears in front of the whalers and stuff like that, that's a great scene. And it's a nice, uplifting scene. And it would not have happened if it hadn't been for the previous 2 movies. To take the previous 2 movies, one highly rated, and in Joe's case, the other one extremely lowly rated, and to have that amalgamation come out into this is kind of a miracle. This movie works. It works because it builds on what has come before. It makes logical steps both with the characters and the stories. It doesn't condescend. It treats the audience like, they've been here from the start and they've been paying attention. And it ends on a nice, hopeful note. I gave it an 8. And I kind of feel bad about giving it an 8. I feel like I should give it a higher. But, one of the things about this, as good as it just is. It's not high art. It is not like, I might have given it a higher score, perhaps, if it wasn't for, say, something like Avengers Endgame, which was the culmination of like the 25 movies that came before it. And I still feel that movie hit the mark really, really well. Maybe it's just that I hold Star Trek up to a higher standard or something. I don't know. But whatever the case may is, I do love this movie and absolutely should see it. And I feel 8 is an appropriate number for this movie. And that's where I'm sticking, my man.
Listen, I'll spare you the suspense. I also gave it an 8, and I think that is I gave Khan a 9, and I gave Search for Spock a 4, I believe.
Yes, you did.
It's like, so this is bouncing back to Khan territory. So I think an 8 is perfectly reasonable. But you're absolutely correct. It's hard to. It's almost like you've been watching a chef struggle to try to make filet mignon, and kind of getting mixed results. And then you just sort of say, hey, you know what? I'm in the mood for a cheeseburger. And all of a sudden he makes this fabulous cheeseburger that totally hits the spot.
Yep.
That's kind of what this was. It's like you said, it's not high art. They're not trying to elevate the franchise to new heights with its epic tales and deep dramatic moments, etc. It's just a fun story. It's a timeout. It's a fun little story, and it's done so well. Honestly, this could have been schlocky, slapstick, sort of goofy comedy. I kind of feel like this is probably the only film out of the franchise going into the Kelvins even. This is the only one that, quite frankly, I would have to call a science fiction comedy.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the primary goal of this film is to make you laugh. And yeah, at this moment in time, we needed it. We needed that palate cleanser. So, but honestly, they do it with panache. They do it with style. They don't sacrifice story to do the comedy. I felt that every part of the story, you could possibly ding it here and there in terms of how easy some of this was done. I felt like Kirk and Spock gave themselves the only fun project. Like they had the part of the mission that was kind of just the fun part, and everyone else kind of got stuck with these kind of, more boring, mundane tasks, which they do. And I said to myself, it's like, they literally steal nuclear fusion or something out of the reactor on a naval ship. I'm saying to myself, that should be pretty impossible. But then I kind of said, well, all right, but two things. And this also goes for Sulu's mission and for Scotty and Bones' mission. Two things. They do have some technology on their side. They do have the beaming. They're able to do that. And the other part of it, this is also an advanced. These are humans who live in the 23rd century and have, knowledge of things and that should sort of give them a natural advantage. There's a part when I'm watching Sulu fly, and I kind of was a tiny bit confused, by the way, when you see him flying the helicopter carrying what I assume was the transparent aluminum that Scotty had created very quickly, by the way.
Yeah.
Well, like he gives the guy the formula, and a couple hours later he's got it. But I remember when Sulu was flying the helicopter, I said to myself, why didn't they just beam the transparent aluminum? It seems like they can do that. Why did they not choose not to do that? They like, it seemed very old fashioned, him lowering it down the helicopter into the ship. Anyway, I'm kind of getting a little off track, but
no, man, it's okay. You know what? We were just saying it feels like there's not much to say. It doesn't sound. Remember that scene that was awesome, and you found something. So I'm not going to stop you.
But yeah. So anyway, the point being, like I said, it is in some ways it's interesting because we were talking about the motion picture and kind of saying how it felt the most episodic. Like this felt like a 2-hour episode of Star Trek. I sort of feel like this one, maybe even more so, feels that way because this to me is sort of a classic episode of, we need to go to this primitive planet to get something, or we need to, like, I sort of felt like the the challenge, the story point, we have to go back in time and get whales and bring them back. Like they came up with that pretty quickly. Wasn't a lot of time spent on developing the plot, like you said. And we just sort of set out to do our thing. So yeah, in that respect, it does just sort of feel like an old episode of Star Trek, frankly. And by the way, I also recall having a thought toward the beginning when the probe comes down and now Earth is going to die because of the probe. And I sort of had a flash of, oh, we're doing another being from space going to blow up the Earth unless we. And then I said to myself, all right, motion picture was 3 films ago or 4, however you want to count it. So this shouldn't feel repetitive. For some reason, that sort of popped into my head. Mm-hmm. But anyway, I'm giving it an 8, and I will shut up.
Well done, sir. I'm almost afraid to ask, who asked you?
This is this is sort of what I always say, that sometimes you just sort of go for the low hanging fruit. There were a few times when I thought that the effects were a little off and didn't quite hold up. And ironically, it was some of the easier stuff, that you think would be fairly simple. For example, they're lowering the glass transparent aluminum is into the thing, and it just looks really awkward, like very cheap special effects that they're in front of a green screen, and so everything's invisible or whatever. Right. Stuff like that. And oddly, when they go back in time, they do that funky thing with the heads. The shapes of the heads sort of morph into each other.
Yeah, that was interesting. I'll just say interesting.
Well, yeah, right. I mean, that's another thing. Didn't quite age well. I remember at the time thinking like, holy cow, I don't know how they did that, but that was pretty wild. I mean, I guess that was the early CGI that we saw happening there. And yeah, I mean, they're trying to do something to imply the weight of time travel or something. So fine. But anyway, so yeah, I think I'll just go with some of the effects. Some of the effects were just a little wonky.
You know what? I can't blame you for that. I still feel like the part where Scotty's kind of coming out of the cloaked ship looks terrible. Still looks terrible. Doesn't matter how well they do it. So I absolutely, I'll agree with you there. I have a couple of things. First off, I felt like I don't mind if you have a theme in a movie, if you want to demonstrate. In this case, save the whales. That's fine. I don't have a problem with that. I very much minded if you beat me about the face and body to get it across. And I felt like there were some moments in this movie where it was a little overwrought in trying to get its message across to me. But that's not even really my biggest who asked you. It's just something that even back then it's like, yes, I know. Let's stop wailing. Fine. Could we please just move on? I'm absolutely, and I'm behind that. I'm all behind that and stuff like that. But please stop beating me. Stop beating me. The second one is almost not fair because with the benefit of hindsight, there's a line that the Klingon says, "There will be no peace as long as Kirk lives." That doesn't pay off.
Okay. Yeah. Yes, and frankly, I'll even do you one better. I remember I said that early on. I kind of felt like a sigh of relief that I was in safe hands because the dialogue was really good. That really didn't kick in until the conversation with Spock's mother. That part where the Klingon is yelling and screaming about what Kirk did, I remember saying to myself, "Did I see a different movie? Didn't the Klingons hijack? Didn't the Klingons murder one of the guys? Threaten to murder everybody else? Basically hijacked the ship. So you think they'd be the ones kind of running and hiding from what happened? Yet this guy's sort of standing there acting all."
High and mighty. Yeah.
It's like, really? So I get where it was going. They're kind of recapping the events that happened before to get the audience caught up and to sort of bring the stakes back up. Like, okay, we get it. So that by the time you get to the end, the stakes are high. But yeah, I remember kind of feeling like, it felt a little weird.
Yeah.
But,
although I kind of appreciated, that it was a whole political posturing type thing. We deny nothing. We have a right to protect our race. And Sarah comes back with, you have a right to commit murder.
yeah.
I don't think it was too out of line. But yeah, I can feel you there. But still, my whole point is that he makes that threat, and it's a great threat. There'll be no peace as long as Kirk lives. And they never really follow it up. There's no real payoff to that line, regardless of the fact that he saves the Federation. Because the Klingon guy, he wasn't even on Earth when the thing came back. Who knows where he was? Maybe he's floating in space or something. I don't know, because he shows up again in Star Trek 6. But yeah, it never really paid off. But that's unfair to this movie. It's just something I want to point out, because we're definitely gonna we have 2 more movies left in the series to get to still. For me, the one thing I really would have liked, I felt like, and I said it during the review as well, if I could change anything, for God's sakes, give Sulu something better to do. The poor guy. Supposedly there was this whole little subplot of him, going around Chinatown in San Francisco and stuff like that, and which, I would have loved to see. Every single character had these great little character moments. Sulu really didn't have any. And I love Sulu. So, yeah, I would have really liked to have seen that story, that Sulu story that got cut for whatever reason.
I'll tell you what, you're absolutely correct. And I remember even when they showed him talking to the other helicopter pilot, I kind of had a moment where I was like, oh, yeah, Sulu's in this. Like he was like very absent for quite a while.
Yeah.
But by the way, I'll just take a minor point with what you said earlier about how there was sort of no payoff to the thing with till Kirk. There's no peace until Kirk's dead or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
The only kind of counter I have for that is Star Trek 6. I kind of do feel like, even though 5 was this, which we'll talk about next week, this weird sidetrack from anything that we've sort of been doing thus far, 6 kind of steered us back. And I kind of like the fact that even the same actor is playing the Klingon high command guy. So yeah, that's my minor defense of that.
Yeah, you know what? We will, as the series progresses, we'll see. So just consider that as keep an eye out, ladies and gentlemen. But what about for your consideration, sir?
Well, again, I've been singing the praises of this one this whole time, so kind of hard to narrow it down. I mean, the whole thing I think is a gem, frankly. But I do sort of want, there's 2 points I'll just sort of zero in on. One is, again, I thought the dialogue for something that could have easily kind of just gone off track, I was really shocked at how well tuned it actually was. Even the conversation that Kirk has over dinner with the Joyce, her name is Joyce in this movie, I think.
You mean the Catherine Hicks character?
Yes.
Jillian,
sorry. I don't know where I got that from.
It's okay.
So I remember thinking that conversation right there, it would have been a great example of where things kind of got off track, and we have to do some exposition at this point. I didn't find it at all. I found that whole conversation felt very organic, which surprised me. I mean, I will say that the Jillian character seemed a little eager to kind of be open to what's the possible. I mean, for the most part, she's saying, yeah, right. Yet somehow she's still around. But hey, she needs to be there. I didn't mind that. But honestly, there were moments of greatness. In fact, the part when she's doing the tour, right, and she's talking about the whaling, and she's talking about how terrible it is that they're hunting these beautiful creatures, and Spock says something like, to hunt a species to extinction is illogical, and she turns and looks at him and goes, "Whoever said the human race was logical?" And it was like, wow. Like, that was a wow moment for me, because I thought, like, and honestly, it was one of those perfect moments where Spock said his line, she said her line, and then your brain filled in the rest. Spock didn't have to say something like, that's exactly what I say all the time. Like a lesser movie would have finished the joke. No, she out-Spocked Spock, for a second there. And it was just brilliant, and Spock didn't have to say a word to highlight what had just happened. So I just sort of that to me was like just a great highlight. And the other thing, just as my fun little favorite moment, again, that part when the whaling ship fires the harpoon and it just clanks in midair. Love that. I mean, and then the ship appears. That is such a good moment. So it was a very, very satisfying moment.
You know what? That's nearly the same of what I put. I put that my favorite thing about the movie is that the moments between character was the most memorable part. It's not a particular scene, not a special effect, just character moments. So weirdly, I think we did the same for your consideration.
I'll buy it.
But yeah, no, you're right. That first of all, to pause a moment, that was a great moment, and it was handled. A more arrogant person. Like when we get to Star Trek V, we'll talk about the fact that how Shatner just wouldn't let anybody get the last word. Okay.
Yeah.
Whereas Nimoy, he's a director, and he's a generous director. He's not in this for his own scenes. He wants to make sure his scenes are good and everything like that, but he absolutely allows each character, each actor to express themselves in new ways, and ways that they hadn't really had a chance to really sink their teeth into before. They've mostly been side characters, and each one of them, save for Sulu, as I mentioned earlier, has a nice little moment. Jillian, for all of her, I make fun, the rah-rah, the cheerleader and stuff like that. That is an extremely powerful scene that I hate to say this, but if Shatner was playing Spock, he absolutely positively would have said, that's what I say. Absolutely would have done that. I love you, William Shatner, don't get me wrong, but seriously.
Full power now, sir. Shields at maximum.
Steady. Hold on tight, lassie.
Can we make breakaway speed?
Well, that's all I can give you.
Book 8. Book 9.
Now.
Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home.
Guess what? That ends our review of Star Trek IV, of The Voyage Home. Oh, but the pain isn't over. Not that this week was a pain, but honestly, from the beginning, when we said we were going to do the Star Trek series, the original Star Trek series, this next one is the one I was least looking forward to. I honestly have only seen it once.
Yeah.
So, throw in your Johnny Dangerously reference right there. Yeah. We're heading for a shit show next week, ladies and gentlemen. For all this week of gushing, I get the feeling that next week is going to be a lot of puking. As Joe and I review Star Trek V, The Final Frontier.
Yes. Well, listen, I don't think there is a Star Trek fan out there that is not sharing in your cringe right now. So, yeah, that'll be an interesting one too. I haven't seen it in forever either. So, yeah, I don't expect kindness next week, but it'll be interesting to see what we've walked away with.
I mean, I've read a lot of stories about things that went wrong with it and stuff like that. Maybe I'll take that into consideration, but I doubt it.
Yeah. My friend, I enjoyed this. This one was, if I wasn't clear enough, this one was a pleasure for me. So thank you very much. I had a good time talking about it.
Me too, man. This particular episode reminded me of Friday nights, getting pregame on, a couple of drinks in before we head out someplace and stuff like that. It's just shooting the shit. So that's what this felt like, and that's nice. I like that.
I agree. I agree. Next week will not be quite so fun, but with that, my buddy.
No, the next week will be like waking up the next morning and trying to figure out if we can even find a diner to have breakfast at.
That's right. A greasy egg sandwich we're going to need.
And then some. Have a spectacular one, my friend.
You too, my friend. I will see you here next week. Thanks for listening to the Reviews Without Remorse podcast with Joe and Dave. Join us here every Thursday for a new episode. And be sure to check out the Reviews Without Remorse channel on YouTube for spoiler-free reviews of new releases. If you enjoyed this podcast, please consider becoming a patron. You can find our page on patreon.com. As little as $1 a month goes a long way. All clips in this podcast are used for commentary and critique, and is considered fair use. No copyright infringement is intended.
Stewie, I'm not really much of a fast food eater.
Yeah? Can you read my mind? Can you tell what I'm thinking right now? I'm thinking shut up and get a salad.
I want some McNuggets.
We'll get to you, Brent.
I want a hamburger. No, a cheeseburger. I want a hot dog. I want a milkshake.
You'll get nothing and like it.
Hello?
Yes, welcome to McDonald's. Can I help you?
Oh, hailing frequency's open, huh? Okay. Yeah, we're gonna get 2 McChicken sandwiches and a Diet Coke and... what do you want, Michael?
A McDLT?
No, I already told you they don't make those anymore.
You know, sometimes it's a regional thing. You could ask.
No McDonald's anywhere makes a McDLT anymore.
I'd love a Shamrock Shake if they got any of those.
It's September, Jonathan.
Stewie, can I take this headband off?
No, LeVar, you're blind. That's the only way you can see.
I'm just saying they have all the ingredients for a McDLT.
Just hang on, all right? There's a lot of us. It's a big order.
What time do they stop serving breakfast?
It's 3 o'clock.
Some of them serve breakfast all day.
No, serve breakfast all day!
Do they have beer?